high as 40% that people say they'd be willing to use political violence. So, in these moments where there's a lot of conspiracy theories and false flag kind of ideas and false misinformation, disinformation circulating, we're at high risk, of additional violence because people think the other side has already done it. But in terms of your question about what's underpinning this, I think on the one hand, yes, you have both sides presenting an existential threat, the idea that democracy is in dire straits, and it is. We're on the list of backsliding democracies globally. Things are not going so well for the U.S. on the Democratic side. So you have that kind of sense, and then you have, this bubbling up among ordinary citizens of supporting violence. So it's not just among elites, it's among ordinary citizens, even in my own social media feed over the last day or two, among people saying things like, you reap what you sow. I think that's really dangerous to actually justify a political assassination attempt.
And then you have what everybody calls a moment. We're right on the eve, or we're right at the start of the Republican National Convention. President Biden has said, lower the temperature. Former President Trump has said that he's changing his speech to reflect a new call for unity. In your research, how much does the intervention of leaders, one way or another, affect the grassroots, 1 in 5, 20%, 40%, as you just said, those who might have tendencies towards violence?
Well, it does help. It helps a lot to see the temperature get lowered from political elites, from elected officials. We definitely want to see that, the language of unity and the rejection of violence. The question is that what you're asking is, can you put the genie back in the bottle, and how quickly can you do that? And there I'm a little more skeptical. I think we do see that among ordinary citizens who are, either justifying this violence or calling for similar reprisal attacks, that, they're not necessarily listening right now to what two candidates are saying. They have already made up their mind, and that's where I think we have to see some vigilance and some real de-escalation happening within communities, not just among political elites and elected officials.
And when you think about this, where do you think that this, the genie back in the bottle is one way of saying it, and of course one can't in general, but there are methods of bridging, of making connections, as opposed to just constantly pulling back into silos and tribes and convinced partisan, political and social, religious, all those positions that people now hold, and treat the opposition as enemy rather than just a political opponent.
Yeah, absolutely. The first thing to say about that is that there's really good evidence that you can prevent people from believing harmful information that persuades them to take violence as the solution, or to see violence as the solution to their political problems or to the problems that they see in the world. It just has to be done before they believe it, right? There's a kind of preventative work very upstream that is extremely effective, evidence-based, that people reject propaganda, harmful online content, conspiracy theories, if they're warned about them before they encounter them. Once they already believe them, once they already believe that an election is invalid, once they believe that there's an orchestrated attempt to disrupt an election or something, that's much harder to come back from. It's not to say that it can't be done, but it's much more like a therapeutic intervention and not a large-scale kind of media literacy intervention. So we do need those types of things to happen, and it happens across the dinner table as much as it happens on the campaign trail. And that's what I would sort of urge people to think about, is what are they saying in their own home environments, in their communities, in terms of supporting violence, and what are they saying to de-escalate or build bridges across those divides in their own neighborhoods.